Morning light lay flat on the kitchen table, pale and cold. I stood there with a small orange pill bottle in my hand, twisting the cap. It didn't move. I tightened my jaw and tried again. Nothing. My fingers slipped. The bottle fell and hit the floor, rolled once, then stopped near the trash can. Pills scattered, white dots against the linoleum. I stared at them. Didn't move. Bending down felt harder than it should have. When I finally crouched, my knee sent a sharp warning up my leg. I grabbed the edge of the cabinet and lowered myself the rest of the way, ending up sitting on the floor. Not fallen. Not standing. Somewhere in between. I stayed there longer than necessary, picking the pills up one by one, counting them twice because I didn't trust myself anymore. I told myself this was normal. That everyone my age had mornings like this. I also told myself my son was being dramatic. He always had been. My phone buzzed on the table above me. I pushed myself up, breathing heavier than I wanted to admit, and picked it up. One message. From my son. Don't expect me to take care of you. I read it once. Then again. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I typed, I just need help with the roof. Deleted it. Typed, it's nothing serious. Deleted that too. My hand shook enough that it annoyed me. At some point, I decided I'd done enough explaining in my life. I locked the screen and placed the phone face down, like it was something dirty. I stood up too fast. The room tilted. My foot caught the edge of the rug and I lurched forward, shoulder bumping the wall. Not enough to hurt. Enough to scare me. I stood there with my forehead against the paint, counting breaths, angry that my body needed so much negotiating just to stay upright. I went to the window. The porch was right there, the railing I'd built myself, the steps worn smooth by years of boots. I remembered my wife standing on that porch once, watching me work. You don't have to do everything alone, she'd said. I never answered her. I just kept working. I opened the bottom drawer by the stove. It stuck. I pulled harder than I should have. Inside were manuals, insurance papers, an envelope of old photos, and a thin folder. Will. I hadn't planned to touch it. I did anyway. Cut to the notary's office. Quiet. Smelled like old coffee and paper. He slid the document toward me and pointed. My hand shook when I signed. I tried to steady it with my other hand and failed. The stamp came down, dull, final. On the drive home, I felt something close to relief. Like I'd finally moved a heavy piece of furniture out of the way. Back in the house, the silence pressed in. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wall while memories came, uninvited. Not the good ones. My son at 10. School gym. Folding chairs. Parents clapping too loud. His name was called for an academic award. He walked up alone, holding the certificate with both hands, scanning the crowd. I was outside, leaning against my truck, arguing on the phone with a foreman about a deadline. When I finally walked in, the gym was already empty. He was sitting on the floor by the wall, the certificate bent at one corner. You didn't come, he said. I remember exactly what I answered. I didn't even hesitate. I was working. Someone has to pay for all this. I said it like it settled the matter. That night, I left the certificate where it was. I told myself awards didn't keep the lights on. The phone rang later that afternoon. I let it ring. Evening came. I tried opening the pill bottle again, using a towel this time. It worked. I swallowed the pill dry, irritation burning my throat. A car pulled into the driveway. Too fast. The door slammed. There was a knock, sharp, impatient. I opened the door. My son stood there, jaw tight, eyes already set for a fight. Did you really do it? He said. Do what? I asked. Change the will. I didn't invite him in. You said you wouldn't take care of me. That's not, he stopped himself. You didn't even ask. I did, I said. You answered. He laughed once, short and ugly. So this is how you get back at me? I looked at him and felt something harden instead of soften. I didn't raise you to be like this. The words landed wrong the second they left my mouth. I saw it in his face. Not anger, something older. You don't get to say that, he said quietly. You weren't there half the time. And you are now. I shot back, too fast. Silence filled the doorway. This isn't fair, he said. I wanted to say something smart. Something measured. Instead, I said the smaller, worse thing. I guess being busy finally paid off. You learned how to leave. His jaw tightened. He didn't answer. He turned and walked back to his car. Sat there with the engine off longer than necessary, hands on the wheel. Then he drove away. I closed the door and leaned my forehead against it. The porch light flickered on as the sky darkened. I left it on. Behind me, the phone buzzed again on the table. Part of me thought, maybe this time, I was the one who left first. I didn't turn around. I woke up with my lower back locked tight, the kind of pain that doesn't stab, just sits there, heavy and unmoving, like someone set a brick inside you overnight. The room was still dark. I tried to swing my legs off the bed and my body refused on the first attempt. On the second, I managed to sit up, breathing through my teeth, waiting for the dizziness to decide what it wanted from me. By the time I stood, my shirt was damp at the collar. I hated that more than the pain. In the hallway, the floor creaked the same way it always had, but now it sounded like it was complaining. In the kitchen I saw the trash bag, swollen and stretched thin, leaning against the cabinet like it was tired too. I told myself I'd take it out before noon. I told myself a lot of things. I grabbed the bag and lifted once. Too heavy. I set it down and tried again, slower, like that would change physics. It didn't. I dragged it across the floor instead, the plastic whispering against the tile, my arm stiff with effort. Halfway to the door the bag split with a soft rip that felt louder than it should have. Coffee grounds, orange peels, damp paper towels, everything spilled out like the house was rejecting me. I stared at it. For a moment, I thought about my son's message from yesterday, don't expect me to take care of you, and the thought that followed, ugly and automatic, fine. I won't. Then my knee gave a warning when I bent down, and I ended up crouched too low, one hand on the floor, the other picking up garbage like I was a man cleaning up after his own stubbornness. I breathed hard. I felt heat in my face. Not from effort. From shame. When I finally got it into a new bag, it was past noon. I didn't call anyone. I didn't even look at my phone. The porch light was still on from last night. I told myself it was because the switch was loose. It wasn't. I turned it off. Then turned it back on. Just to prove to myself I could. The coffee tasted burnt, but I drank it anyway. I sat at the table, watched my hand tremble slightly around the mug, and tightened my grip until my knuckles whitened. I told myself I'd done the right thing. I told myself someone had to draw a line. I told myself he needed to learn. That's what I'd always told myself. Around noon, my neighbor Tom knocked. He didn't wait for an answer. He never did. He stepped in just enough to see the trash bag by the door, then looked at me like he'd caught me lying. You all right? He asked. I'm fine, I said. Tom raised an eyebrow. You weren't yesterday. I didn't give him anything. He glanced at the porch light, on in daylight, then back at me. You and your boy still not talking? He made his choice, I said. Tom nodded once, then did the thing people do when they think they're helping. My brother did that with my mom, he said. Talked big. Acted busy. But you know what he showed up for? I didn't answer. Tom's mouth tightened like he regretted it and said it anyway. The will. The money makes time for people. That one went under my ribs. I stood there staring at him, feeling my jaw set. Get out, I said, too calm. Tom held up his hands. I'm just saying, I heard you, I said. He hesitated, then left without another word. After he was gone, the house felt smaller. Not quiet. Tight. I walked down the hall and opened the closet I hadn't touched in years. Coats that didn't fit right anymore. A toolbox I hadn't opened since before my wife got sick. I pulled it out and set it on the floor. The latch stuck. When it finally opened, the smell of metal and dust hit me all at once. Inside were old tools. Some of them my son had held once, hands too small, eyes too big. I remembered teaching him how to use a hammer. He'd hit his thumb and cried, embarrassed more than hurt. I'd laughed. Not kindly. I'd said, if you can't handle that, you won't handle much. At the time, I thought I was toughening him up. Now, the memory didn't sit right. I closed the box harder than necessary, like I could seal the past inside it. The phone buzzed later. I didn't look. It buzzed again a few minutes after that. I flipped it over. Unknown number. I watched it ring until irritation crawled up my neck. On the third ring, I answered. Yes? This is the notary's office, a woman said. We just needed to confirm, I already signed, I cut in. Yes, sir. We just want to make sure you understand this update replaces the prior document completely. Her voice was careful, like she'd said those words to men like me before. I understand, I said, sharper than I meant to. That's why I came in. A pause. All right. If you have any questions or need copies mailed, I don't, I said. I hung up and immediately felt foolish. She hadn't done anything wrong. I stood there holding the phone, aware of my heartbeat in my ears, angry at myself for snapping, and angrier that I cared. That evening, I sat on the porch with coffee gone cold, watching cars slow down as they passed my house. For half a second, every time, I thought it might be him. It wasn't. I told myself I didn't care. The lie tasted like pennies. After dark, I found myself in my son's old room without remembering deciding to go there. The bed was made, untouched. The desk still had scratches from where he'd carved his initials years ago. I opened the closet and moved a stack of old notebooks. Behind them was an envelope I'd never seen before. My name was written on it in handwriting that was younger, uneven. I sat on the bed before opening it. Inside was the certificate from the gym. The same one. Still bent at the corner. And behind it, a piece of lined paper. I waited for you. I know you were busy. That was all. No accusation. No begging. Just 2 lines that made my chest tighten in a way I didn't like. I felt irritation first, at the paper, at the years, at the fact that he'd kept it. Then something underneath that didn't have a clean name. I folded the note carefully. Too carefully. I put everything back where I found it and closed the closet, like closing it could undo what I'd read. Back in the living room, I sat in the dark. The porch light glowed through the window. The phone lay on the table, screen up this time. I stared at it. I even picked it up once, my thumb hovering over his name. I didn't press it. I set it down again, hard enough that it clicked against the wood. Then the phone buzzed, not a call this time, a voicemail notification. The same unknown number. I hit play before I could talk myself out of it. Mr. Harris, a woman's voice said, brisk and strained. This is Linda from Franklin Tech. Your son listed you as his emergency contact. Please call me back as soon as you can. It's important. The message ended. The room stayed still. My throat went dry, and for the first time since he drove away yesterday, the line I'd drawn stopped feeling like strength. It started feeling like a trap I'd built for both of us. The porch light flickered once, just once, and I didn't reach to turn it off. The phone slipped out of my hand and hit the table face down. I didn't move to pick it up. Your son listed you as his emergency contact. That line kept replaying. Not the woman's strained voice, not the urgency, Just the fact that after the message, after the slammed door, after the will stamped final, he still wrote my name down. My chest felt crowded, like there wasn't enough room for air and pride at the same time. I picked the phone up again, thumb hovering over the screen, and that's when the front door rattled, hard, once, then again. Not a knock. Someone trying the handle. I turned just as the door swung open and my son stumbled inside, pale, breathing like he'd been running for miles. One hand clutched his side, the other pressed a wad of tissue against his palm. "Dad," he said, voice tight, almost embarrassed. I didn't know who else to call. For a second I didn't move. Not because I didn't care. Because my mind was still sitting in the notary's office, watching that stamp come down. Then the tissue shifted and I saw the red seeping through his fingers. Not pouring. Not dramatic. Just enough to make the room feel suddenly real. "Sit," I said. The word came out rougher than I meant. He took one step, wobbled, and grabbed the back of the chair like it was the only thing keeping him upright. I caught his elbow. That surprised both of us. My hand on him. His weight against me for a half second. He flinched like he expected me to shove him away. I didn't. I guided him down into the chair. "What happened?" "It's nothing," he said too fast. His eyes flicked toward the door behind him like he was afraid something followed him in. "You're bleeding," I said. "That's not nothing." He swallowed. "I cut it. In the car. Just glass." He tried to laugh and failed. I walked to the sink, opened the cabinet under it, and pulled out the first aid kit my wife insisted we keep stocked. I didn't look at him while I did it. If I looked too long, something in my face might move in a way I didn't want. I set the kit on the table and flipped it open. My fingers hesitated over the bandages, stupidly aware of how old they looked. "Give me your hand." He held it out like a kid offering a broken toy he didn't want blamed on him. I peeled the tissue away. The cut ran across his palm, shallow but messy, a thin line that still oozed. He watched my hands more than my face. "Linda called," I said, because silence was worse. "From your work?" His jaw tightened. "I know." "Then tell me," I said. "Why is your boss calling my number?" He stared at the table. "She's not my boss," he muttered. That was the first crack. I dabbed the cut with antiseptic. He hissed. "You don't get to hiss at me," I said automatically, and I hated myself for sounding like I always had. He looked up, eyes sharp. "I wasn't hissing at you." "Then stop acting like everything hurts except what matters," I snapped. The words landed wrong. I felt it. He felt it. I wrapped gauze around his palm anyway, tighter than necessary. His mouth opened, then closed. His throat worked. "I got let go," he said finally. 2 weeks ago." I paused with the tape in my fingers. "Fired?" "Laid off," he corrected, like the wording made it less humiliating. "Company restructured. They kept the people with different skill sets." He said it like he was reading a statement he'd practiced in the mirror. I finished taping the bandage and let his hand go. It felt strange not holding on to that small task anymore. "So Linda called me because I didn't answer," he said. "Because I told them not to call anyone. Because I didn't want," he cut himself off, breathing through his nose. "Because I put you down years ago as emergency contact and never changed it." There it was. Not apology. Not warmth. Just a fact that made my stomach twist. "Why didn't you come 2 weeks ago?" I asked. "Why now?" His eyes flicked to the floor. "Because things got worse." I waited. He didn't fill the space. I hated that I still knew his rhythm, how long he'd hold out before giving the truth, how he'd test whether I'd push. I pushed. "Worse how?" He rubbed his bandaged hand against his thigh like it itched. "Bills," he said. "Rent. Credit cards. My car." He took a breath like he was stepping off a ledge. They were going to repossess it tonight. So you ran here, I said. He flinched again. I drove, he corrected, defensive. I didn't run. Same thing, I said. It's not the same, he shot back, then his voice dropped. I didn't know where else to go. The room held that sentence for a moment. I wanted to say something smart. Something measured. Instead, what came out was old and ugly. Funny how people find time when they're out of options. His face tightened, heat rising behind his eyes. You think I'm here for money? I think you're here because you need something, I said. And you finally can't pretend you don't. His chair scraped back an inch like he might stand. His shoulders trembled with restraint. I didn't come to beg, he said. Then what did you come for? I asked. A bandage and a lecture? His breath hitched. For a second he looked younger, like the boy in the empty gym. Then the adult mask snapped back on. I came because I panicked, he said through clenched teeth. Because I had a bad day. Because I couldn't breathe in my apartment without hearing that voicemail playing in my head, Linda asking for you. You know how humiliating that is? Humiliating, I repeated. You're bleeding on my kitchen table and you're worried about humiliation. You don't get it, he said, voice rising. You never did. It's always about what you think is real pain. I stared at him. My heart knocked once, hard. Real pain is waking up and not trusting your legs, I said. Real pain is cleaning up your own mess because you're too proud to ask for help. His eyes flicked, just once, to the corner where the trash bag still sat by the door like an accusation. He saw it. That mattered. He looked away quickly, like noticing was weakness. I didn't ask you to do anything, he muttered. No, I said. You just told me not to expect anything from you. His face shifted at that, anger, shame, and something else underneath. He swallowed. I was angry. You were cruel, I corrected. He pushed his chair back and stood up too fast. For a second he wobbled, and his bravado cracked. He steadied himself, jaw set. I shouldn't have texted that, he said. Not an apology. A fact. But you changing the will? That's insane. The word hit like a slap. Insane, I repeated. You come into my house bleeding and you call my decision insane. He opened his mouth, closed it, then said it anyway, because he couldn't help himself. You did it to punish me. There it was. The moral trap, laid out on my own kitchen floor. Was I protecting myself, or teaching him a lesson? And worse, did I even know the difference anymore? I felt my hands curl into fists at my sides. I forced them open. I did it because you told me the truth, I said. If you don't want to be responsible for me, fine. I can accept that. But I won't build my last years around a fantasy. He laughed once, short, bitter. You think you're not punishing me? That's the funniest thing you've ever said. He walked past me toward the living room like he owned the place. Not far, just enough to breathe different air. His eyes landed on the hallway, then the drawer by the stove, then back to me. You already decided I'm the villain, he said. So why are you acting like this is some noble boundary? I followed him slowly. My back complained with every step, but I didn't let it show. You want noble? I said. Here's noble, you should have come when I asked for help with the roof, not when your landlord started sending warnings. His face flashed. I told you, I couldn't. You could, I said. You chose not to. He turned toward me, eyes bright with anger now. You think you're the only one who had to choose, he snapped. You think I don't remember being 10 and sitting in an empty gym waiting for you? The air left my lungs. He hadn't said it in years. Not directly. Not like that. My instinct was to defend. To say work mattered. To say I did it for him. That same worn-out excuse. I tasted it on my tongue. It tasted like pennies. You didn't come, he said, voice shaking now. And then you framed it like I should be grateful you paid for the chair I sat on while I waited. He stared at me as if daring me to deny it. I didn't deny it. I didn't apologize either. Not yet. The stubborn part of me still wanted to win. I did what I knew, I said, and it sounded weak even to me. You did what was easiest for you, he shot back. Working was easier than showing up. That sentence landed in my chest with a dull thud. He saw it hit. He pressed, because anger feels like power when you're scared. And now you want to teach me a lesson with paper, he said. With a stamp and a signature. Because that's what you understand. Control. Watch your mouth, I said, automatically, stupidly. He laughed again, uglier this time. There it is. The dad voice. Like you still get to be the authority. He took a step toward the door. His hand tightened on the knob, then loosened. He didn't leave. That was the second crack. The first was his bleeding hand. The second was that he couldn't walk away without something inside him breaking. My phone buzzed on the table. I didn't look. He did. He froze. What is that? He asked, suddenly wary. I glanced down. Email notification. Notary's office. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. His face changed like he could already read the subject line. You already did it, he whispered. You already. He stepped closer, snatched the phone before I could stop him. The movement was fast, childish. Give that back, I said. My voice went sharp. He stared at the screen, breathing harder, and the color drained from his face. Confirmation of will update, he read aloud, like he was reading his own sentence. So it's real. He looked up, eyes wide, furious and terrified at the same time. You actually went through with it. I reached for the phone. He pulled it away. Don't, he warned, and the words sounded ridiculous coming from him in my kitchen. I stopped. Not because I was afraid. Because I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Not just anger. Panic. You did this while I was, he swallowed. While I was drowning. You weren't drowning, I said, then hated myself for saying it. His face twisted. You have no idea, he said. You think drowning is dramatic. You think if there's no blood, there's no emergency. He lifted his bandaged hand. This is the first time I've bled in front of you in years and you still think I'm performing. That hit harder than I expected. I felt my shoulders drop an inch. He saw that too. So what now? He demanded. You want me out? You want to watch me lose everything so you can feel right? The moral trap tightened. If I comforted him now, would it be love, or would it be surrendering my boundary the moment he was in trouble? If I didn't, was I protecting myself, or proving I was the cold man he accused me of being? I held his gaze. Put the phone down, I said quietly. He hesitated. His fingers trembled. Then he set it on the table like it was hot. I'm not here to watch you lose everything, I said. But I'm also not here to be used. His jaw clenched. Used, he repeated bitterly. You hear yourself? I do, I said. And I'm still saying it. He laughed once, then the laugh broke halfway and turned into a breath he had to swallow. He rubbed his face with his good hand like he was trying to wipe off the last 10 years. I don't know what you want from me, he said, quieter now. That was the first truly honest sentence he'd said all night. I surprised myself by answering without heat. I want you to stop making me the last option, I said. I want you to look at me like a person, not a problem that shows up when your life gets messy. He stared at me. The anger didn't vanish. It shifted. And what do you want me to do? He asked. Move back? Quit my life? Become, what, your nurse? The old pride in me tried to rise again, sharp and defensive. I forced it down. I don't want a nurse, I said. I want a son. The words sounded simpler than they felt. They also sounded dangerous, like admitting that meant admitting how lonely I'd been. He looked away, blinking hard. I can't fix this in a day, he muttered. Neither can I said. We stood there, two men in the same house, both stubborn, both scared, both pretending we were made of steel. Outside, a car passed, headlights sweeping across the wall. In that brief light, I saw how tired he looked. Not just stressed, tired in a way that made him seem closer to my age than his. He cleared his throat. Can I stay here tonight? He asked, and the question came out like a humiliation. I didn't answer right away. That silence was my last bit of control. You can sleep on the couch, I said finally. His shoulders loosened a fraction, like he'd been holding his breath for the verdict. Then his face tightened again. And the will, he asked, because he couldn't stop himself. Am I in it? I looked at him, and the stubborn part of me wanted to say yes just to quiet him, or no just to punish him. Instead I said the truth that hurt both ways. That depends, I said. On what? His voice rose again, defensive. On whether you're here because you're scared, I said, or because you actually want to be here. His eyes flashed. That's not fair. Neither is growing old alone, I almost said, then I stopped myself. I heard how clean it would sound. How easy. How much it would let me feel righteous. I swallowed it. Life isn't fair, I said instead, rougher, uglier. But you don't get to show up only when the floor drops out and call it love. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he nodded once, small, tight, like it cost him something. Fine, he said. I'll sleep on the couch. He turned toward the living room, then paused without looking back. I didn't think you'd answer, he said quietly. When I walked in, my throat tightened. I hated that it did. I didn't know if I would, I admitted. He didn't respond. He walked away, slower now, the fight drained out of him in uneven waves. I stood in the kitchen alone, staring at the phone on the table. The notary email still glowed on the screen like a warning. A few seconds later, another notification popped up, this time on my own number again. Linda. Another message. No words I could see from across the room. Just the fact that she was still trying. I looked toward the living room where my son was lowering himself onto the couch like it hurt to do it. I realized something cold and simple, the stamp on that will hadn't ended anything. It had just started a different kind of emergency. And now, whether I liked it or not, I was on the list. I woke up to the sound of the couch springs giving up. Not loudly. Just enough to announce failure. For half a second, I didn't remember why my chest felt tight. Then it came back all at once, the blood, the argument, the question he asked like he already knew the answer. Can I stay? I stayed still, listening. The refrigerator hummed. A floorboard creaked in the living room. Someone breathed, shallow and uneven, on furniture that wasn't meant for sleep. I rolled onto my side and pain shot through my lower back, sharp enough to steal a breath. I clenched my jaw and waited it out. No sound. I wasn't about to let him hear me struggle my way out of bed. When I opened the bedroom door, the kitchen light was already on. That stopped me. He stood at the counter, shoulders slumped, shirt wrinkled, hair still wrong from sleep. One hand rested on the edge of the counter like it didn't fully trust his legs yet. In the other, he held my mug, the chipped blue one I never let anyone else use. Coffee dripped onto the counter. He froze, eyes flicking to me like he expected to be yelled at. Sorry, he said quickly, wiping it with a paper towel that tore in his hand. I didn't say anything. That seemed to make it worse. You didn't have to, he started, then stopped. I mean, I can go. If this was just for last night. There it was. The retreat. The preemptive exit. My back throbbed as I stepped into the kitchen. The pain made me shorter, meaner. You slept, I said. That's all. He nodded. Once. Too fast. I didn't really, he said. Sleep. I poured myself coffee. It smelled burnt. Wrong. Everything tasted wrong in the morning. He watched my face like the reaction mattered. I used to hate this room, he said suddenly. It always smelled like coffee and waiting. I turned toward him. Waiting for what? For you, he said. Too quick. Like he hadn't meant to. The words hung between us, unfinished and ugly. I felt the old reflex rise, to defend, to explain, to list hours and bills and sacrifices. Instead, what came out was smaller and worse. You came home eventually, I said. I always did. He looked at me then. Really looked. And I saw doubt flicker, not about me. About himself. Yeah, he said quietly. Eventually. The coffee maker clicked off. Loud. I reached for a plate and my hand shook. Just enough for him to notice. He looked away first. Do you want eggs? He asked. The question sounded rehearsed, like practice. Like someone trying not to take up space. I don't know what today looks like, I said. For either of us. He nodded. Relief and fear mixing in his face. That's fair. Outside, a car passed. Inside, nothing moved. An hour later, the quiet had turned sour. He tried to help. That was the problem. He washed dishes I hadn't asked him to touch, stacked them wrong, chipped the edge of a plate. I told him to leave it. He didn't hear, or pretended not to. When he reached for the trash bag by the door, I snapped. Don't. He froze. I was just. I said don't, I repeated. Louder than necessary. He dropped his hand like it burned. Okay. The word came out flat. Controlled. Too controlled. I hated that tone. It sounded like something I'd taught him. I've got it, I said, already dragging the bag toward the door, my back screaming its protest. The bag tore halfway. Garbage spilled across the floor. He stepped forward. Dad. I said I've got it. The shout surprised both of us. He stopped. I crouched too fast and pain flashed white behind my eyes. I sucked in air through my teeth and stayed there longer than necessary, one hand on the floor, picking up garbage with the other. He stood there, useless and guilty. Let me help, he said quietly. No. The word came out harder than it should have. Something in him cracked. Not loud. Just enough. You don't want help, he said. You want control. I stood up slowly, trash in my hands. You don't get to psychoanalyze me in my own kitchen. He laughed once. Not amused. You taught me how. That one landed. Later, we sat at opposite ends of the living room. The TV was on, muted. Neither of us watched. I'm not staying long, he said. I just need a few days to figure things out. Figure what out? I asked. My life, he said. The mess I made. I nodded like I accepted that. What about after? I asked. He hesitated. Too long. I don't know, he admitted. That honesty scared me more than anger. In the afternoon, I found him in the hallway, staring at the closed door of my bedroom. Looking for something? I asked. He jumped slightly. No. I was just. Don't, I said. That room's off limits. His jaw tightened. Right. Of course. He walked away, shoulders stiff. An hour later, the phone rang. Not mine. His. He answered in the living room, voice low, tense. I didn't mean to listen. I did anyway. Yes. I understand. No, I can't today. Because I don't have the car anymore. That part stuck. He hung up and sat there staring at the wall. They want the apartment by the end of the month, he said without looking at me. I waited. And the car's gone, he added. That's why I walked in bleeding. I cut my hand trying to get my stuff out before they took it. The room shifted. So this isn't a visit, I said. He looked up. No. It's a landing. He didn't argue. That night, I handed him a blanket. Not a gesture. A transaction. Couch, I said. Just tonight. He nodded. I know. He lay down without turning the TV on. That hurt more than if he had. I stood there longer than necessary. You can't live here, I said finally. He closed his eyes. I figured. And I'm not fixing everything for you, I added. I know, he said again. The room felt like it was holding its breath. But, I said, hating that word even as I used it, I'll help you find a way that doesn't turn you into someone who only comes back when everything collapses. He opened his eyes. That's a lot of conditions. So is adulthood, I said. Silence. Then, quietly, do you mean that? I didn't answer right away. I mean this, I said. Tomorrow, we call together. Your landlord. Your bank. Whoever you've been avoiding. He swallowed. Together? Yes. He stared at the ceiling, blinking hard. Okay, he said. Together. I turned off the light. As I walked back toward my bedroom, my back screaming again, I realized something that made my stomach twist. This wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was something worse. Responsibility, without guarantees. And for the first time, I wasn't sure which of us was more afraid of that. Mourning didn't reset anything. It just made the damage harder to ignore. My back hurt so badly I had to sit on the edge of the bed and wait. The pain didn't come in waves. It stayed. Like it had decided to see how much I could take before I asked for help. In the kitchen, he was already there. Sitting. Not pretending to be busy. His phone lay on the table, screen dark. Mine was next to it. We didn't say good morning. Landlord, I said. He nodded and dialed. Yes. I understand. Pause. No. I'm not asking for a favor. Longer pause. Okay. He hung up. They're filing, he said. Friday. How many days? I asked. 3. I looked at the calendar on the fridge. A magnet from 15 years ago still held it in place. Bank, I said. He called. The hold music was cheerful in the way things are when they don't care if you're drowning. Yes. I can do part of it. Pause. No. He ended the call and dropped the phone on the table harder than he needed to. They're freezing the account, he said. Tomorrow. He reached into his backpack and pulled out an envelope. White. Official. Already opened. They emailed this too, he added. But they mailed it, so I'd take it seriously. I didn't touch it. He slid it across the table anyway. Final notice, 72 hours. Total due, $18,640. My eyes stopped at the number longer than they should have. If it's not paid, he said, they start legal collection. Wages. Future income. Whatever I managed to get. The silence after that wasn't emotional. It was logistical. I stood up too fast and felt my back seize. I leaned on the counter and waited it out. He noticed. Looked away. So this is it, I said. He didn't answer. Later, he packed. Not everything. Just enough to lie to himself that this was temporary. I watched from the doorway. There's a bus station, he said without turning around. 2 miles. To where? I asked. Anywhere cheaper. I nodded. You don't have to. I know, I cut in. He turned then, and something in his face finally cracked. Not fear. Anger. You waited, he said. You waited until it was this bad. I stayed quiet. You could have changed the will earlier, he went on. You could have said something. But you waited until I had nothing. That's not. You did it so you wouldn't have to help, he snapped. You used paper so you could sleep at night. That one cut too close to deny. He laughed, sharp and ugly. You know what? Fine. Keep it. All of it. I don't want to owe you for the rest of my life. He grabbed his bag and headed for the door. Stop, I said. He froze, hand on the handle. I opened the drawer and took out the envelope. Cash. Less than the number on the paper. More than I'd planned. I didn't explain. I held it out. This doesn't fix anything, he said. I know. You think this makes you better? I don't care. He took it anyway. His hands shook. He hated that. At least say it, he said quietly. You're scared. I didn't answer. The phone rang. Mine. I answered. Listened. Didn't interrupt. Yes, I said. I'll come now. I hung up. Hospital, I said. Your aunt. He nodded. Didn't ask questions. I'll be gone tonight, I added. When you come back, he said, I'll be gone. We stood there too long. You know what hurts the most, he said, not turning around. You didn't even fight to keep me. The door closed before I could answer. At the hospital, time flattened. Plastic chairs. Bad coffee. Forms that asked questions no one wanted answered. When I came home, the house was empty. The couch was bare. His mug was gone. I went to the desk. Opened the drawer. The will lay there. I picked it up. My hand shook. Not from anger. From doubt. I thought of the envelope. The number. The words 72 hours. I signed. Then I stopped. Stared at the page. My signature looked wrong. Smaller. Like it belonged to someone else. I crossed it out. Started again. This time the pen slipped. The ink smeared. I swore. I signed anyway. Not clean. Not confident. I folded the papers and shoved them back into the envelope like I didn't want to see them. The next morning, I mailed it without rereading. On the porch, I flipped the light switch. It came on. Flickered once. Then steadied. I didn't smile. I just stood there, long enough for the quiet to feel earned.